The morning I went blind was quiet. Too quiet. No bird song, no hum of the fridge, not even the distant rumble of the bus I'd grown used to hearing at 6:45 every morning. Just silence. And darkness. So thick and still it felt like it was pressing against my skin. I remember reaching for the lamp beside my bed, flicking it on and feeling nothing. No warmth from the bulb, no comfort from the glow. Just black. At first I thought it was a power outage. I shuffled to the window, opened the curtains, and waited for daylight to hit my face. But it didn't. There was no light. Only the sound of my own breathing and the thump of my heart racing in my ears. I kept blinking, rubbing my eyes like that would fix something. It didn't. It never did. The diagnosis was swift and brutal. A rare, degenerative eye disease I'd ignored for too long. I knew my vision had been slipping. Street signs had started blurring. Faces were harder to recognize unless I was up close. But I told myself it was just age. Just tiredness. I'd lived my life pushing things aside to make room for everyone else's needs. Why would this be any different? The doctor's voice was calm but firm. It's permanent now. There's nothing more we can do. I didn't cry in the office. I didn't flinch. I just nodded like I understood. Even though my whole world had just cracked open and swallowed me whole. I waited until I got home, until I was alone in my tiny apartment, with the peeling linoleum and the humming heater that never really worked. Then I let it all out. I sat on the floor and screamed into the emptiness. I wasn't afraid of being alone. I'd done that all my life. But I was terrified of being invisible in every way that mattered. My first instinct was to call Tyler. My fingers trembled as I dialed. I had to feel for the buttons. Still too stubborn to ask for help. Still too proud to admit how far I'd fallen. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. His voice was polished and perfect, like a man who had finally outrun his past. "Hi, this is Tyler. I can't get to the phone right now. Leave a message." I didn't. I hung up. An hour later I tried again. This time he picked up. "Mom," he said, like he was surprised to see my name on the screen. "Is everything okay?" "No," I said quietly. I can't see, Tyler. I woke up and everything's gone. The doctor says it's permanent." There was a pause, not the kind filled with emotion or fear, just hesitation. "Oh," he said. "Wow, I'm sorry, Mom." I waited. I thought he'd say he was coming, that he'd be on the next flight, that he'd figure something out. But instead he asked, "Do you have someone who can help? Like a friend, maybe, or a nurse?" I was stunned. I was hoping maybe you could come, just for a little while. "I don't know what to do, Tyler." Another long pause. Then came the excuse. "I mean, I can look into some options. But work's crazy right now. I've got a big presentation next week, and it's not like I have space in my apartment. Maybe there's a facility, somewhere that helps people with this sort of thing." That was it. That was the moment something inside me broke. The boy I'd raised, the boy I'd skipped meals for, stayed up nights sewing hems on thrift store suits for, sold my father's house to send to college, was talking to me like I was a stranger asking for a favor. Still, he booked a flight. He came the next day. He was in and out in less than 24 hours. He brought a suitcase, helped me pack a few things, and said he'd found a transitional center on the other side of town. Told me it would be temporary, that I'd get more help there. He made it sound like a kindness, like he was doing me a favor. But all I could feel was the cold finality of his voice, the way he avoided touching me, the way he flinched when I cried. I ended up not going to the center. A friend from church heard what happened and let me stay with her. Her couch wasn't comfortable, and her house smelled like cats and menthol rub, but it was better than being discarded like a bag of broken memories. A month passed. No calls, no visits, no check-ins. Just silence. Until the letter. The one I sent. The one that changed everything. But let me back up. You need to understand what he didn't. You need to know what I gave up so he could become the man who abandoned me. And why, even in the darkness, I never stopped seeing the truth. When Tyler got into that college, I thought it was the proudest moment of my life. I remember the day the letter arrived. Thick, embossed, with the university seal. I stood in the doorway of our little kitchen, holding it like it was made of gold. Tyler was out at his part-time job, so I waited until he came home, pacing back and forth like a wind-up toy with nowhere to go. He opened it in front of me. His hands shook just a little, but his face, God, the look on his face when he read those words. "We are pleased to inform you." I'd never seen him smile like that. It was the kind of smile that came from deep in the soul, like something had finally gone right after years of things going wrong. I cried. Not a loud cry, just tears that slid down quietly, like they were finally free after being held back too long. But then reality sank in. Tuition, room and board, books, travel, none of it was covered. There was a scholarship, sure, but it wasn't full. Financial aid, minimal. Loans, too much of a burden, and Tyler didn't want debt hanging over his head. And I didn't want it either. Not for him. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on my side staring at the peeling paint on the ceiling, thinking about every dollar I didn't have. I knew what had to be done. There was only one thing left with real value. The house. My father's house. The one he left me when he passed. I'd never lived in it. Too many memories, too much silence in those walls. But I kept it because it was the only thing left of him. My mother had died when I was young, so that house was all I had of family history. It was where I took my first steps, where I had my first birthday party. The window in the back still had my height marked with pencil from every birthday until I turned 12. It was my inheritance, and I sold it. Quietly. I didn't tell Tyler. He was already overwhelmed, already trying to figure out how to get his textbooks used, how to juggle everything without breaking. So I made the decision for both of us. I called the realtor, signed the papers, and cashed the check. Every cent of it went into his future. Tuition, housing, supplies, a new laptop. I told him it was taken care of, that he'd gotten more financial help than we thought. He hugged me so tight I couldn't breathe. He said, "You saved my life, Mom." And all I could think was, "No, I gave you mine." That fall, he left. I watched him board that bus with a duffel bag and a nervous laugh, waving through the window. He didn't know I'd skipped paying the electricity bill that month so he could have a new coat. Or that I'd been living mostly on instant noodles to stretch every dollar. It didn't matter. Seeing him walk into that future was enough. Or so I thought. The calls came less often as semesters passed. First weekly, then monthly. After graduation, he moved to Chicago, and the calls nearly stopped. I didn't push. I didn't want to be the overbearing mother. I told myself he was busy, that building a life took time. But deep down I felt it, the distance. It wasn't just miles. It was something colder, more deliberate, like he'd started reshaping who he was, and I didn't fit into that new version. I remember the first time I heard him talk to someone on speakerphone while I visited. He used a different voice, more clipped, more polished. He said things like networking opportunity and scaling up. I felt like a ghost in my own son's apartment. Everything was white and sleek and modern, and I could feel him watching me like I didn't belong. I should have known then. I should have realized that the child I raised wasn't the man standing in front of me anymore. And yet, when I lost my sight, I still turned to him. Even after the way he distanced himself. Even after he stopped calling. Because when you're a mother, there's a part of you that never stops hoping, never stops believing they'll come through, that they'll remember who stood beside them when no one else would. So when he told me I couldn't stay, that I was a liability, I didn't even fight. I just nodded and let him pack my things. I let him walk me to the car like I was a guest overstaying her welcome. I didn't cry until the door closed behind him. And that night, lying on my friend's couch, I remembered the box, the one I kept in the back of the closet, sealed and dusty. Inside were the documents, the house deed, the sale contract, the cashier's checks made out to the university, all in my name. The truth he never knew. So I sat down and wrote him a letter, my handwriting shaky, the lines crooked, But the message was clear. I gave you everything I had, even the things you didn't know about. I went blind, but you chose to close your eyes long before I did. I didn't sign it with love, just my name. I mailed it without a return address. And then I waited, but I didn't have to wait long, because that letter made its rounds in ways I never could have imagined. It started with a phone call I almost didn't answer. My friend Sandra had gone to the store, and I was sitting alone in her living room, tracing the worn edges of the coffee table with my fingers. The phone buzzed beside me. An unfamiliar number. Normally I let those go to voicemail, but something told me to pick it up. Evelyn. The voice was hesitant. Female. Unfamiliar. Yes. Who's this? My name's Marla. I'm your cousin. Well, second cousin, technically. On your mother's side. We met years ago, briefly. Sorry to bother you, but I think we need to talk. The last time I'd heard from anyone on my mother's side of the family, I was still in high school. After her death, they drifted off like leaves in the wind, everyone too busy or too bitter to stay connected. So I was stunned. Apparently, the letter I'd sent Tyler had found its way to her. Not directly, but through another cousin, Jennifer, who still lived in our old neighborhood. Jennifer had seen Tyler's name on the envelope when she dropped by his office one day. She worked in the same building and noticed him through the glass, all suit and shine, completely unaware of the storm coming for him. Curious, Jennifer had asked around. One of Tyler's assistants, unaware of the letter's origin, had mentioned the contents. Some dramatic thing from his mom, she'd said flippantly. But Jennifer recognized my name, and she wasn't one to let something like that go. So she told Marla, and Marla, being the kind who loved digging into old stories, went hunting. That's how the letter started to travel, from inbox to inbox, passed along like wildfire in the dry brush of family gossip. But it didn't stop there. Somehow it made its way to a local blogger, a woman named Dana, who ran a modest lifestyle blog and occasionally dabbled in personal stories and family dynamics. Marla had sent it to her, thinking maybe it would be therapeutic for me to see my story told. She had no idea what would happen next. Donna published a sanitized version, changing names, removing addresses, but keeping the soul of it intact. She titled it, "The Mother Who Went Blind and the Son Who Looked Away." It went viral. People started sharing it, commenting, arguing, crying. Thousands of readers wrote things like, "This broke me," or "I don't know how someone could do that to their own mother." Others confessed their own stories. Abandonment, neglect, guilt. The post spread like a wound the world hadn't realized it needed to expose. And that's how it reached Tyler's boss. His name was Gavin Marks, CEO of a fast-rising tech firm in downtown Chicago. A man who believed deeply in corporate culture and brand image. A man whose own mother, as it turned out, had raised him alone after escaping an abusive husband. A man who recognized the pain in that letter not as a story, but as a mirror. Gavin didn't confront Tyler directly. He didn't need to. Instead, he forwarded the article to Human Resources with a single line, "Please look into this." It didn't take long for HR to dig deeper, to connect the dots, to realize the anonymous son in the story was one of their own, a senior analyst with a spotless resume and a suddenly questionable past. Tyler called me that night. I hadn't heard his voice in weeks. "Mom," he said, "did you send that letter to anyone else?" His tone wasn't apologetic. It wasn't even angry, it was panicked. "No," I said flatly. "Just to you." "Well, it's online. It's everywhere. My boss saw it. HR pulled me into a meeting today. They said it reflects on company values." I didn't respond. I waited. He went on, breathless. "I could lose my job. Do you understand that? People are looking at me like I'm a monster. I didn't even know you sold that house. Why didn't you tell me? Why would you blindside me like this?" That was the moment I laughed, a bitter, broken kind of laugh that made my chest ache. "Blindside you," I said. "You think you're the one who got blindsided." He was silent. For once he had no spin. "I didn't tell anyone," I said. But maybe the truth has a way of finding its own voice when the one who lived it goes unheard for too long. He hung up on me. A few days later, I heard from Jennifer. She said Tyler hadn't been seen at work, that rumors were swirling. Some said he quit. Others said he was on leave. No one knew for sure. But what she did know was this. He'd been trying to find me. Desperately. Through old neighbors, through family. Even tried calling Sandra's house. But I never answered. Because I didn't need to. For the first time in years, the silence was mine to give. But what I didn't expect was who came to see me next. It was late afternoon when I heard the knock. Not the kind of knock you expect from a stranger or a delivery person. It was firm, familiar, hesitant. I was sitting by the window. Not that I could see it anymore, but I still sat there out of habit, tracing the chipped paint on the sill with my fingers, breathing in the sun-warmed scent of spring. Sandra was at work, and I was alone in the house, listening to the soft creak of the floorboards settling. I stood up slowly, every step deliberate, every movement cautious in the darkness I now lived in. I didn't ask who it was. I simply opened the door. The scent hit me first, a mix of cheap cologne and stress sweat. I knew that smell. I used to hug it goodbye every morning for school. Tyler didn't say anything at first. I could feel him standing there, unsure, probably scanning my face for something. Maybe a trace of warmth. Maybe just a clue that I was still the woman who used to pack his lunches and sew the holes in his socks. "Mom," he said finally, his voice softer than I remembered, but still carrying that edge of performance he'd picked up over the years. I said nothing. I didn't know what to do. I didn't think it would blow up like that. The letter. Why would you send something like that? I tilted my head toward the sound of his voice. "You're still worried about the fallout, aren't you? Still worried about you." His silence was an answer in itself. "I came to say sorry," he added, quieter now. "I should have been there. I didn't understand what you were going through. I didn't know you were losing your vision, and when I found out, I just panicked. I wasn't ready for it. I told myself it was temporary, that you'd get help somewhere else, that I had too much going on." "You told yourself a lot of things," I said, "but you never once asked what I gave up to get you where you are." He stepped inside, uninvited but not unwelcome. Not yet. His shoes clicked softly against the hardwood. I heard him sit, probably on the edge of the couch, like a guest in a stranger's home. I stayed near the window, not facing him. "I read the whole thing," he said. "Not just the article. Your letter. Over and over. I kept wondering if you hated me." "I don't hate you," I said. "I mourn you." He didn't speak for a long time. I heard his breath hitch. I don't know if he cried. If he did it silently. The way I used to cry at night after our phone calls when he rushed off the line, barely asking how I was. "I lost my job," he said finally. "They didn't fire me, not officially, but I was asked to step away indefinitely. They said I didn't represent their values, that I lacked compassion, maturity, integrity." He let out a bitter laugh. "They're right." I said nothing. What was there to say? The damage was done, and not just to his reputation, but to something much deeper, the bond between a mother and son that should have been unbreakable. "After that, I reached out to some people," he continued. "Jennifer, Marla. I even called Miss Ortega. You remember her? From the old block. She said she saw you the day I left you at Sandra's. Said you looked smaller somehow. Not just physically. Like you were fading." I turned away from the window then. My hands clenched. That's how it feels, Tyler. When someone you love treats you like an obligation, you start to shrink. They sniffled. "I want to make it right, Mom. I know I can't undo what I did, but I want to try. Please. Let me take care of you now. I moved out of the city. I got a quieter place. I've been researching vision support centers, mobility training. I've even started volunteering at a center for the visually impaired." I sat down slowly in the chair across from him. My knees ached, my back tensed. I wished I could look him in the eyes and search his face for sincerity. For the boy I raised, not the man who left me in the dark. I'm not the same person I was when you left me, I said. I've learned how to navigate this new world. It's terrifying, yes, but it also showed me something. Resilience. I don't need saving, Tyler. What I needed was your presence, your respect, your love. I know, he said, and I failed you. That was the first honest thing he'd said. We sat in silence for a while, the kind of silence that hangs between people who've been through a war, not with weapons, but with choices and consequences. He offered to stay the night, said he'd sleep on the floor if he had to. I told him Sandra would be home soon, and we'd talk more tomorrow. I didn't know if I believed he'd changed, or if this was just guilt reshaping itself into something performative. But I also didn't slam the door behind him. Maybe I wanted to believe there was still something in him worth salvaging, or maybe I just wanted to see what he'd do next, when there was no spotlight, no audience, just the raw truth of who we were. But that wasn't the end, because the next day I received a letter of my own. The envelope was thick, textured, and expensive. Too expensive. I could tell just by the way it felt between my fingers, the weight of it, the way it sliced softly through the air as I ran my thumb across the seal. No return address, only my name, typed in raised letters. Sandra handed it to me that morning, her voice tinged with curiosity. "It came by courier," she said. "No signature required, just dropped it off and left." I waited until I was alone to open it, not because I expected something scandalous, but because after everything, I'd grown cautious. Hope had become something I held at arm's length, fragile, suspicious, unpredictable. Inside there were two things. The first was a handwritten note. The penmanship was neat, formal, unfamiliar. It read, "Mrs. Evelyn Ross, you don't know me, but I know of you. Your story reached me at a time when I needed to remember what sacrifice truly means. I hope this helps you build the life you deserve. No strings attached, no expectations. With respect, GM. The initials stopped me." GMI read it again, and then again. My hands trembled as I unfolded the second item, a check. I couldn't see the numbers, of course, but I recognized the shape, the crispness of the paper. My heart started thudding as I carefully traced my fingers over the embossed bank stamp, the name, the signature. I called Sandra immediately, barely able to get the words out. "Read me the number," I said. She gasped. Actually gasped. "Oh my God, Evelyn, it's $75,000. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't speak, couldn't even process it. "Who the hell is GM?" she whispered. And then it hit me. Gavin Marks, Tyler's boss, the man who had pushed him out of his high-rise job, the one who had read my letter, seen something in it that moved him, not as a businessman, but as a son. He'd sent me $75,000. I don't know what shocked me more, that he had done it without ever contacting me, or that I didn't feel anger, not toward him, not even toward Tyler in that moment. I just felt overwhelmed. Like my world, which had been shrinking, darkening, was suddenly expanding again, into something uncertain, but alive. With Sandra's help, I used the money not for luxury, but for freedom. I found a small apartment of my own, not far, but far enough to have my own space. We hired a mobility specialist who helped me relearn the layout of my world, with my new reality. I enrolled in classes for the visually impaired, learned Braille, started attending local support groups, and slowly I started stitching together a life I could live, not just survive. Tyler visited often after that. Not every day, but more than I expected. At first he brought gifts, flowers, books on tape, even a guide dog application. But I didn't need things. I needed consistency. And to my surprise, he stayed consistent. He started showing up without pretense. No briefcase, no bluster. Just him. Sometimes he'd sit and read to me. Sometimes he'd just talk about his regrets, his fears, the ways he'd lied to himself more than anyone else. "I was trying to be successful," he told me once. "I thought if I climbed high enough, I could forget how close to the ground we used to be." I didn't say anything. I let his words hang in the air, Because healing isn't about quick forgiveness. It's about honesty and time. A few months later, I was invited to speak at a community event. Sandra had submitted my story to a local nonprofit focused on caregivers and aging parents. They wanted me to share my experience. I hesitated at first. Me? What could I possibly say to a room full of strangers? But I did it. I stood in front of them, white cane in hand, heart in my throat, and I told them everything. The nights I cried alone, the meals I skipped, the day I signed away my inheritance to buy my son's future, and the day he kicked me out like I was luggage he'd outgrown. But I also told them about the letter, the check, the second chance, and the man who sent it, not out of guilt but out of recognition, of the invisible army of mothers who give until there's nothing left, and still manage to give more. People cried that day, hugged me after, told me I had a strength they admired. But it wasn't strength. It was grief that learned how to walk. When I got home that night, there was a voicemail from Tyler. His voice cracked as he said it. "Mom, I know it doesn't make up for the past, but I wanted to tell you. I started a scholarship, in your name, for single mothers who put their kids through school. I hope it helps someone. I hope it honors what you did for me. And that was the first time I cried for a reason other than pain. But life, as I was learning, has a way of throwing curveballs even when you think the storm has passed. Because a week later I got a call from a hospital. Tyler had been in a car accident. When the hospital called, I was folding laundry with Sandra's help. It was just a Tuesday, ordinary in every sense. Until it wasn't. The nurse on the other end of the line was calm, professional, and terribly vague. "He's stable," she said, "but we need someone listed as next of kin to be here. He asked for you." Those words landed like a punch to the chest. I hadn't been in a hospital in years, not since the day I was diagnosed. I remembered the smell of antiseptic, the cold sting of uncertainty in the air, and the way the walls felt like they were closing in the longer I sat waiting. Now here I was, fumbling for my coat, cane in hand, heart pounding, trying to process the idea that my son, my only child, was lying in a hospital bed asking for me. Sandra drove me. The silence in the car was thick. I don't think either of us knew what to say. I gripped the seatbelt, trying to imagine what I would find. Was he hurt? Would he walk again? Was this his punishment? Or his redemption? We reached the hospital, and a nurse guided me to his room. Each step felt surreal. I counted the doors as we passed them, the soft beeping of machines, the hushed voices. The world was a blur of smells and sounds I couldn't place anymore. When I entered the room, I could hear the steady rhythm of the heart monitor before anything else. And then his voice, hoarse, weak. "Mom?" It was the first time he'd said it in weeks without sounding rehearsed. I sat down beside him, reaching for the edge of the bed. My fingers found his hand. Warm, real. "I'm here," I whispered. He didn't say much at first, just squeezed my hand like a child afraid to let go. Then he began explaining in bits and pieces. He'd been driving back from a volunteer shift when a truck ran a red light. His car was totaled. He had a concussion, 2 broken ribs and a fractured leg. But it could have been worse. Much worse. "I thought I was going to die," he said quietly. "And the only thing I could think about was that letter you sent me. How I never deserved what you did. How I let you down." I didn't respond. I just let him talk. It wasn't time for reassurances. He needed to bleed the guilt out of himself first. "I was so angry when I was younger," he went on. "Not at you. At everything. At how hard things were. At how other kids had more. I used to think I was cursed. That you were holding me back. But I was just too blind to see the truth. You were the only one pushing me forward. I felt the tears before they came. Silent, steady. I kept chasing success, thinking it would finally quiet the shame I felt for turning my back on you," he said. "And then when you went blind, it shattered everything. I couldn't face it. I didn't want to face the kind of man I'd become. So I left you there. Because if I looked at you, I'd have to look at myself. There was no dramatic background music, no swelling soundtrack, just a mother and son, broken in different ways, trying to glue the edges of their story back together. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, he said, voice barely audible. But I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to earn it. I stayed by his side that night, even after he fell asleep, listening to the soft rhythm of his breathing, the occasional blip of the machines, the hallway chatter muffled behind thick hospital doors. I thought about all the nights I'd stayed up waiting for him to come home from parties in high school, how I used to listen for the sound of his sneakers on the porch steps, how I'd kissed his forehead while he slept, never knowing if he'd appreciate the things I did or forget them altogether. Now here I was, doing the same thing, sitting in silence, watching over him in the only way I still could. And in that moment, I realized something. I'd gone blind, yes, but in some twisted way it had finally made him see. In the weeks that followed, he stayed with me while he healed. Sandra had cleared out her guest room, but Tyler insisted on sleeping on the couch, refusing to inconvenience anyone. He asked questions now, real ones, not just the polite kind people ask out of obligation. He asked what my favorite memories were, what music I missed listening to, what food I'd been craving but hadn't dared to cook. He started learning Braille with me. He bought an audiobook subscription and spent evenings reading to me in his steady, soft voice. And one night, out of nowhere, he said, "I looked up the house. The one you sold. I drove past it when I was in Georgia last year." I froze. "It's still standing," he continued. "Different paint, different family. But I stood there on the sidewalk for a long time, just thinking about how that house could have been mine, about how it was yours, and how you let it go without ever asking for anything in return." He cleared his throat, but I could tell he was holding back tears. "I'm going to buy it back," he said. "Maybe not right away, but one day. And I'm going to put it in your name again." I shook my head. "You don't have to do that." "I know," he said. "But I want to." For the first time, I believed him. But life wasn't done surprising us yet. Because just as we were settling into our new rhythm, just as I dared to believe maybe this was the beginning of something good, Tyler received another letter, one that would drag up a secret I'd buried deep. And this time, it wasn't about money, or guilt, or even betrayal. It was about a lie I'd told long before he ever knew what sacrifice really meant. In the weeks that followed the hospital stay, things felt lighter. Tyler genuinely changed, not in words, but in the quiet consistency of his actions. He started therapy. He spoke publicly about caregiver guilt, about abandoning those who gave us everything. He even got invited to speak on a podcast. That's when the letter arrived. It was postmarked from Atlanta. Thick, formal, and cold. A law firm. I could feel the dread even before Sandra read it out loud. It was from Martin, my late father's former business partner, the man who had pressured me years ago into selling the house far below its value when I was desperate to send Tyler to college. I'd never told Tyler the full story, only that the house had been sold, but Martin had manipulated me, guilt-tripped me, and even subtly threatened legal trouble if I didn't act fast. I had been naive, overwhelmed, and blind to his real intentions. Now he was back, demanding a statement from me to clear his name. Rumors were circulating about the sale, thanks to Tyler's newfound public platform. Investors were pulling away from his real estate firm. His name, once golden in the local business community, was now being quietly tarnished. Tyler was livid. "We're not letting this slide," he said, voice low and steady. He'd changed, but he still had my fire. He launched an investigation, quietly, methodically. Through contacts from his firm and his podcast exposure, he got in touch with journalists, attorneys, even some of Martin's past business partners, who'd also been pressured into bad deals. And then came the bombshell. Martin had been doing this for decades, buying properties off vulnerable people at a fraction of their value, flipping them through shell companies, hiding behind ironclad NDAs and legal threats. Tyler gathered it all: emails, testimonies, old contracts. And then one crisp morning he handed me a letter. "What is this?" I asked. "Your statement," he said. "We're suing him. Not just for the house. For everything. You're not going to be invisible anymore, Mom." The case went public faster than we expected. The media loved it. The blind mother who sold her past to secure her son's future. And was silenced. Headlines ran wild. Martin tried to hit back, but the damage was done. More victims stepped forward. Class action suits followed. Investors pulled out. Sponsors cut ties. Within months, his company declared bankruptcy. And the house? It went back on the market. Tyler bought it. In my name. At triple the price Martin had paid me all those years ago. I stood on the porch one rainy afternoon, fingers tracing the wooden frame I remembered from childhood. The air smelled the same. Wet earth, old oak trees, the faint sweetness of honeysuckle. Except this time, I wasn't the scared girl being forced to sign papers. I was the woman who had come full circle. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it. Justice. Martin lost everything. His name was Mud. His family distanced themselves from him. And the last I heard, he was living in a small condo, fighting multiple lawsuits. Tyler, on the other hand, had started a foundation, one that helped underprivileged students access education without going into debt. He named it the Evelyn Fund. I told him he didn't have to. He said, "That's exactly why I did." We hosted an open house at the newly restored home. Neighbors, friends, people from the community came. Some remembered me, some didn't. But it didn't matter. I wasn't just the woman who lost her sight anymore. I was Evelyn, the mother, the survivor, the one who finally got to come home. Sandra stayed close that night, smiling as I listened to the soft hum of conversations, the sound of children laughing on the lawn, the fire crackling in the backyard. "How does it feel?" she asked. I turned toward the sound of Tyler's voice, laughing as he helped someone carry a cooler. "Like I'm not invisible anymore." And I wasn't. Tyler visits every weekend now. He's still working, still busy, but he makes time. Real time. He reads to me. We take long walks. Sometimes we just sit on the porch in silence, and that's enough. People reach out to me. They tell me my story inspired them, that they finally confronted the people who hurt them, that they finally saw their own worth. And as for Martin, he sent a letter once, a pathetic apology, said he regretted his actions, wished things had gone differently. I didn't even open it. Final punch, I asked Sandra to burn it. As the paper curled into ash, I smiled and whispered, "Some things once gone don't deserve to be seen again, not even in the dark."